Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And it is New Year's Eve today. And I'm here in studio with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
I'm here and happy that dadgummit, I made it almost to another year. This is fantastic.
Well, Bill, we're glad to see you. All right, let's see here. So we've got some interesting articles, and I kind of thought at the end we might even discuss what have been some of the really successful videos we've had for 2024.
Oh,
And
excellent. Good.
yeah, but we're going to start out. Let's talk about Jimmy Carter. So Jimmy Carter was was he a one-term president?
One-term president, yeah.
He beat Ford, right?
He beat
So
Ford.
he
Yep.
beat Ford for re-election, and then he got beat by Ronald Reagan. Yep.
Yes.
So
Not entirely honestly, but we won't go there.
okay. Yeah, Carter's a real likable guy.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
and is Georgia personality, all that. He's not regarded generally as having been a very good president, but he is regarded as one of the best presidents after being president.
Absolutely.
And
That is the gist of most of the headlines that I found, was that he is probably the best post-president
yeah,
former
he's
president that we've ever had. Yeah.
he's been really interesting in that regard. Some of the things, like he gave away the Panama Canal. There was a couple of other things that went on. It didn't help him with the whole thing with the hostage rescue crisis in Iran.
No, and that's
I
interesting. Yeah.
the colonel that headed the Night Stalkers or whatever for the Air Force that was involved in that was the headmaster for the private Christian school I went through growing up.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, he was no longer. He immediately left the military after that
Yeah.
incident.
After that, yeah.
I'm sure he
So
was
tragic. Yeah.
blackballed, but anyways, the it was bad luck, and I think it was really Delta Force's first attempt. They lost their first major operation, and it
I don't
just didn't
remember
go
all
right.
the details of that. I mean, they lost a C-130, and they lost
Yeah, C-130
a
collided with a helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was bad, and that was probably one of the real blights to President Carter's career. But on the flip side, I've always regarded him when I look back. So you hear this thing is like about power and corruption, and he's quite likely to have been the least corrupt and most ethical politician we've ever had as president of the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, now
and earned him only one term. Damn.
I and for folks who are watching, listening, this is kind of an interesting thing because this is something I think if you go into politics, your ethics are out the door. Okay, I've never aspired to be into politics, but when I've heard people talk about, maybe they should run for mayor or something like that, the problem is it gets really bad. I've done construction projects or development projects in various areas, or I've looked at pieces, and I've had mayor's offices from those cities reach out for a donation. Like somehow they heard to the grapevine that I was looking at their stuff, and
Right.
immediately I get these calls. Would you be interested in donating 50,000? We'd love to help you make that project get through real fast. And I'm just like, oh, geez, I really, don't. I'm not going to name politicians here, but I've just seen it all over the years, and but Jimmy was perhaps the least corrupt president we may have ever had, and it's really hard to be successful in that position as a complete and honest.
Your dog agrees with you on that.
Seems to be. But our article today is about America's greatest environmental president, and he had visionary understanding. Yeah, he had this visionary understanding of the climate crisis. Do you want to talk about this, Bill?
Yeah, I'd like to, because the one of the things that made him outstanding was the fact that he, for one of a better term, he could see the future. and we were just coming out of the Arab oil embargo. There were still, restrictions on fossil fuels and things, and that was part of the reason why, Reagan, not Reagan, but Gerald Ford lost the office, and Jimmy Carter came in. He could see that. In fact, one of the things he was, recognized for was putting the solar hot water panels on top of the White House, right? And
1979.
yeah, 1979. He put those in. He wanted to encourage America to really start thinking about the future. I mean, we know now in hindsight that the oil and fossil fuel companies, they knew about climate change and global warming caused by the burning of releasing of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. They knew that decades earlier. In fact, there was even warnings about that go back into the late 19th century, that this was going to be a problem someday. So, interestingly, he is the only, to my knowledge, he is only president in the United States who is a trained nuclear power plant operator.
From submarines, right?
Well, yeah, I looked into this a little bit today because I knew we were going to talk about this, is that he never actually served on a nuclear submarine, but he was trained to serve on nuclear submarines. Prior to that, he served on conventional, diesel electric submarines for 2 years, and he was, the exec and chief, engineer, head of engineering. He was a lieutenant. I think when he left the Navy, he was a lieutenant commander. So he has that engineering background and experience, of course, which would later come into play when there was this big push. We need to go into nuclear fuel reprocessing. And he was the guy that said, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm assuming because of his background in nuclear engineering, he probably understood what the issues were better than his critics. I don't know, but he certainly had firsthand experience with that effort. So he was looking at solar. He was encouraging us. And interestingly, the United States, when he was president, was the leader in silicon solar panel development.
Wow.
We were the leaders in that area. And had we continued to move forward in that particular area, it wouldn't be us buying panels from China. It would be China buying solar panels from us and the rest of the world. But unfortunately, the fossil fuel lobby came in, with backing Ronald Reagan, and they're actually the whole Iran thing plays a part in this. But then again, you want to learn more, go listen to Tom Hartman. So anyway, we had that chance. He set us in that direction, and then we got, unfortunately, derailed, and now we're the ones that are trying to catch up with the Chinese, who dominate the much of the area. Many of the wind turbines that are manufactured in China. Solar panels are manufactured in China. Most of the world's electric cars now are manufactured in China. Yeah. So we, if we had just stayed the course, we'd given him another term, we probably, would have been able to have reversed that course. But, the read my lips guy, or whatever his famous catchline was, he was the one America trusted, and that's who we elected. And sadly, now we're trying to play catch up, 50 years later.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of people who are really ahead of, their thoughts. It's kind of like we were talking one day about how Chernobyl set, or maybe 3 Mile Island, they set the nuclear industry back 30 years. There should be at least 400 more nuclear power plants around the world, and so much more power. It should have pretty much replaced coal by now, and that didn't happen. And that was all because of, basically 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and then Fukushima didn't help either. but that
No.
was, that's a lot more recent, but
Yeah, that was
people keep
20,
thinking that's
2012, 2011, something
yeah,
like that.
2011
So,
or 12.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's fascinating
And
that he was
as I
doing
like
the
to
stuff with
point out,
solar.
I learned to water ski on the Susquehanna right next to the power plant. Well,
That's so funny.
it was being constructed. Yeah.
Now, Carter lived to be 100. Now, is that the longest that
I'm
any president's
thinking it's
lived?
got to be the longest. I mean, most presidents, they make it to maybe 70 or 80. What did George Bush Sr.? He lived fairly long too, but I don't think anybody lived to 100. That's
100.
just
Yeah.
amazing. So,
It's interesting. So Carter spent time in the military, as did
mhm.
almost, I think, pretty much every president before him. After him was Reagan, who, he was an actor for the
Um,
military. And then you
yeah,
had Bush
Biden. Yeah, Biden. I don't think.
Sr.
Yeah, Biden didn't serve any, did he? I don't think Biden served
No,
any time in the military.
no. Bush Sr. Is mentioned in a book called Flyboys because he's shot down in the
Oh
South
yeah, yeah.
Pacific in World
He
War
was flying
II and
torpedoes
barely
all over the world.
rescued.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And if he'd been captured, it was the Japanese were like rowing out on canoes to try to capture him when a submarine surfaced and got him.
And
That
got him. Yeah.
they ate everybody they captured on that island. They ate all the
Well,
pilots that they captured. I mean, it
wow.
was the
That I
Japanese
wasn't
did.
aware
Yeah.
of. Yeah.
No, that it's in the it was there's a real good book called Flyboys that's worth reading,
Huh.
but it talks a little one of the last chapters in the book talks
Yeah.
about Bush
There's a
Senior.
book. There's a movie about World War I pilots called Flyboys too.
Now, since Bush Senior, we Bush Junior was in like the Guard.
Yeah,
He's the
that's
only
another
one with any
story.
military experience, and that I think that active duty experience should be a requirement to be commander in chief.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
I mean, at least 2 years in the military, something to be elected president of the United States. Because up until, like I said, Bush Senior, I think every president had served in the military at some point, and then since then,
I don't know. I guess we'd have. I'm not that
you'd have to
familiar.
do some investigation. I've never really gone back and looked, but I'm just saying,
The
to me,
guys
if you're going
before.
to be the commander in chief of the U.S.
Yeah.
military, you should have a little bit of understanding of really what's going on there.
Yeah. FDR, I don't think served, but he, of course, was the before becoming president. He was I think the Secretary of the Navy or something like that. So
Yeah, something like that.
yeah.
Well, and maybe that would be a reasonable stepping stone, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
if you were,
I would think that'd be
I mean,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that
Truman served. I think he was like in the Guard or something. No, I think Truman was in World War One. I think he was was in the Army in World War One, if I memory serves. And of course, Eisenhower, like
right,
D-Day for crying out loud.
right.
And
Well,
then,
yeah,
and then, of course, Kennedy was obviously the PT-109, that
09.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
Nixon, I don't know. Did Nixon ever serve?
I don't know, but I'm just saying
Yeah, yeah.
we haven't had anybody really legitimately who legitimately served, in my opinion, since Bush Senior. So that's now a long time ago. I mean, you think
Yeah,
Clinton got
yeah.
elected in what? He started serving like
Well, yeah,
93.
Obama didn't. Obama was never in the service.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got a long stretch now where we haven't had former
Well, and part of
military
that,
as
yeah,
leaders.
and part of that too is the fact that the Great Generation or the Greater Generation, whatever it was called, that those folks that were George Bush's era, coming up, are all passing on. My dad passed on a
Right.
few years ago. He was in that generation. So me,
Anyways,
the closest I ever got was I was a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, and I was a brief period of time I was in the Civil Air Patrol.
I was in ROTC and never went
Yeah,
in. I did end up volunteering to be a reserve sheriff's deputy for many
right,
years in
right.
Tennessee, and
Yeah,
I did that. So I felt I
yeah.
did some service to the community. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Waymo. This was an interesting
That's
article.
real. Yeah, I thought it's one of those unintended consequences you don't think about, right? And
Yeah,
obviously, go ahead.
Well, Passengers threatened and harassed in driverless taxis feel powerless to protect themselves. Now, taxi drivers and like Uber and Lyft drivers, they're in, it's like the fifth most dangerous occupation. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a very hazardous. The threat, both the chance of automobile accidents and the threat of violence from passengers is, I mean, we had a 14-year-old kid murder a Uber driver here about 3 months ago here in Omaha.
Yeah.
Shot him, shot and killed a driver. I don't know if he was the passenger of that driver or if he had carjacked the guy somewhere.
I don't know
But
even. Yeah.
yeah, but it was like a 62-year-old driver, and
Trying
yeah,
to earn a few extra bucks in his off
bucks,
hours. Yeah.
right, and he gets killed by some 14-year-old kid. Yeah, but anyways, what's happening is these Waymo vehicles, and Waymo's a little different. So if you went and you ordered a taxi or an Uber or something like that, they're going to come and pick you up in your driveway, or
Wherever.
they'll pull up to the curb wherever you're
Right.
at
Wherever
and
you're
pick
at.
you
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
and take you off. With Waymo, it's a little bit more like you need to be at kind of like a bus stop kind of location, although that's not how they're necessarily set up, but it tells you where you have to go
Right.
to get picked up. So it's slightly different because the cars don't have a human driver, although I believe they can have a human take over if there's an issue that starts
I
coming
think
up.
they're remotely capable of being
Yeah, so they
driven,
can
but
be
they,
remotely driven,
yeah.
but the problem they're getting is people are being harassed while they're trying to ride in Waymo.
Women
And
particularly.
the absence of a driver has emboldened harassment and threats towards passengers traveling alone. And let's see. Um, You might briefly drive into an oncoming lane on a two-lane road to get out a stopped car or pedestrian. A driverless car would wait for something like this. Let me see what we've got here. That
Yeah,
didn't
so
really.
basically, you just, the guy or whoever's going to do the assault just steps out in front of the car and the car stops, right? And it doesn't go anywhere as long as that person's in the proximity. And what they found is that, particularly in the case of women, are being hit on and harassed and things like that. And the car, because it still thinks there's a human I don't want to hurt, won't move. Whereas if it were, a driver actually in the car, the driver would say, "Oh, hell with you, I'm getting out of here," and would go around and take off. So the article, interestingly, they talked to Waymo, and Waymo says, well, there are ways to extricate yourself from these situations, right? And they said there's a button on the screen in the car you can push to get our service people. You can take and redirect the car to go somewhere else. If you were going to the shopping mall and now you're being accosted there in the street. This is all, by the way, is happening there. And if you've been in downtown San Francisco, that's a fairly confined,
Right.
heavily trafficked area. So it's not like you can just whip yourself around and escape something. So they offer advice on how to get out of that. But just one, they found, for example, there in San Francisco, you just put down a traffic cone on the hood of the car and the car won't go anywhere. Right?
Yeah, well, in this case, it said that in one case, two guys stood in front of the car and asked for this woman's number, and the
Right.
car wouldn't go anywhere because they were standing in the road.
Standing there,
And
yeah.
and this is apparently becoming quite common. And they had at least 3 women they interviewed for the article that had all had this happen.
Yep.
And they're like, well, we can call 911. They can hit that button and the operator can call 911.
Right.
It's like, well, what's that going to do for you?
What's
Like if there'd been a human driver, if the Waymo had a human driver, the guy wouldn't have stopped and blocked a car.
Right. Right.
Okay. He would have just gotten out of the way, or the driver could have driven around it or whatever.
Yeah.
But, they have these other things. It's like, there's an option you can get the car to pull over so you can get out. Well, who'd want to get out in that situation?
If
You're
you're
safer
being
in the
harassed,
car.
why do you want to get out of the car? Right. Roll up the windows and lock the doors.
Yeah.
So obviously they're going to have to come up with some. Unfortunately, us damn human beings, being what we are sometimes, just general assholes. I think I can say that safely here. it's just, we got to come up with some kind of way to counter that. And I don't know whether that's in addition to all that plus stuff you build on top of the car, you put a bear spray or something like, whatever it is.
Oh, this is almost too funny. So the first comment on the article is big tech will go to their default setting of having someone in India handle the situation. Uber and Lyft are known for doing that, and that all of their support for drivers and for passengers goes to somebody in India.
In India,
And
exactly.
like it's just really, I don't know. It's just kind of funny to think because you got cultural differences and things like
Oh
that,
yeah,
and it can be difficult to
but then again,
understand.
they do have a record of, if we're talking about sexual harassment there, they have a record of it over there. So I imagine these girls are taught how to deal with those situations.
The funny thing is, it's like anything else. If the guys were good looking enough, the
Well,
women would have been okay with it.
if the approach were, much more cordial and creative and less threatening,
Yeah, I've heard that joke a lot. The difference between harassing somebody and not harassing somebody is how good you look. Oh man, but
Oh well.
it is. I gotta admit, it is kind of novel though. The idea of walking in front of the Waymo car to get it to stop because you're attracted to somebody.
Yeah.
Oh man, not encouraging that. Don't please,
Tell
people, don't be going and doing that. But
tell
still,
me, do
that's
you have
funny.
any current love interests, or could I be that person?
We're not going to discuss this on air. Yeah. I try to be as ambiguous about that as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on to what's going on in California with Volkswagen dealers. So Volkswagen is a brand that's hurting, right? So they're the world's second largest auto manufacturer. They're having to lay off people. And at the same time, they're starting an EV brand called Scout that is going to be direct to consumer. There's not going to be dealers per se. So
that's aspirations.
yeah, they intend to skip the dealer network.
Right.
And the funny thing is their vehicles look a lot like Rivian's, and they're in a partnership with Rivian, so that makes it a little more interesting.
Or Bronco.
Yeah, it looks like, well, they all look kind of the same. So,
yeah.
and they all kind of look like Range Rover.
Right.
They all have kind of that.
That's the stereotypical model for all of them,
Right. Yeah, they're all kind of looking like that now.
When I interviewed Bollinger, that was one of my first questions to the CEO. I said, wow, this really looks like a lot like Land Rover. How much, it's just, the Hatari and Live Free, and all that sort of movies, about African safaris and these rugged, British built Land Rovers. And that's the epitome.
I see the little joke when they say with the Land Rovers, they're still on the road somewhere. They're just broke down.
And the price for
it's supposed to be that's the story about them in Africa. The Land Rovers are still on the road somewhere. It's just they've been left there.
Yeah.
But they all kind of look the same. I marvel at the idea how they come up with new models and how they get them to look different. I mean, there's definitely a skill to making cars look different. You can kind of tell.
There is now a AI software program that has come up with, I think it's 8 million design potential. So I don't know, I guess you go into the thing, you say, I want to build an off the road vehicle for families that seats 7 or whatever. Right. And this thing will go through all of these, iterations and changing shape and size and all this. I think it's something like 8 million design patterns.
Wow.
Some crazy number like that.
Yeah, I just marvel at all the different body styles and all that. It's like, how can you keep coming up with a new
Yeah.
look? I mean, I honestly, I don't know how they do it. You'd think, and it's a kind of same thing. I have the same thought about music. It's like, how did somebody create new music? It's like, haven't we used all the combinations of words? You know, how many
Yeah.
times can we tell people to throw their hands up in the air, or, you
Notes and
know,
yeah. Music particularly, how many, the note potentials of that, there's major score, minor keys and
right? Yeah, it just boggles the mind that people keep coming up with new creative ideas in these spaces. But anyways, so back to Volkswagen. So California dealers are upset. They're trying to block Scout's direct sales model in
Mhm.
California because the dealers want to have them.
Yep.
And I think this is kind of fascinating. A California dealer group has sent a cease and desist letter to Volkswagen Group and Scout, arguing that the plan to sell its upcoming pickup electric pickup truck and SUV directly to customers flouts the state's dealer franchise laws.
Right. Yeah.
Volkswagen Group's dealers have been requesting a pickup from the automaker for years. Hold on. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. But it's interesting because we see, so Tesla doesn't have stores in every state, right? Or they don't have their shops in every state. And a lot of this has to do with the state's dealer laws. Now,
Right. Most of which have them.
I know that if you buy a Tesla here in Omaha, you have to go over to Council Bluffs to get it. So I
Pick
assume
them up,
there's
right.
something, about Nebraska laws
But
or why they have that.
that's not a dealership. That's a
It's a
repair
service load,
facility, a service center, right? So
right?
apparently that's exemption is that you got to order the car online, sight unseen, unless you're, I guess, willing to go to Austin or you know Reno or somewhere, or not Reno, but the Bay Area. Um, so, but then again, more and more people are doing that. In fact, Did you know that Amazon is now selling cars online?
No, I didn't
They
realize that.
Amazon just launched a car
Oh, with
sales
Hyundai, with Hyundai.
with Hyundai, but I think they're adding other models now, other
Oh, okay.
manufacturers.
Yeah, I do remember seeing something about that. I was following this thread on Reddit where somebody was talking about they were talking in the Rivian forum, and they were talking about how they were out looking for a large electric SUV. So they went
Mhm.
and looked at a Kia EV9, and they were talking about just how upset they were with the whole experience at the dealer. And why so many people like the direct sales model.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
much more consumer friendly,
Yep.
and but they were playing the usual games with them, like trying to get them a better deal, different things, and going back and forth to the manager, trying to do all these
Right.
things to show they were,
All that. Yeah.
yeah. And
Razzmatazz.
yeah, a sales technique called the whole Dobbs method, which interestingly originated in Memphis, where I used to live, because I
Oh,
used to be a service provider for the Dobbs dealerships.
okay.
So I didn't directly know the Dobbs family, but
Right.
I'm familiar with, I was familiar with their auto dealerships. And anyways, but that whole method of, you know, trying several times to haggle with the customer and different things was considered to be the whole Dobbs method.
Uh,
Anyways, but this is a issue. So they have the Terra pickup truck and the Traveler SUV set to go into production in 27. So we're talking about an issue here that's 2 years away yet.
2 years away.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And the problem is, I understand these dealers want a Volkswagen pickup, and here they're releasing one, and it's not going to be the dealers.
Something they can
I think that,
profit from.
yeah, the problem with EVs, and I see these all the time. Oh, people don't, they aren't selling or whatever, or the dealer can't. Dealers have a real problem with EVs. The whole dealer model has been, well, EVs have been so shown to sell really well. Tesla in particular is the big dog, through the direct sales model. The dealers don't have a way really to make a lot of service income off of EVs, because there's not a whole lot to fix. because there aren't problems the same
Yeah.
way there are with gas cars. They don't need the routine maintenance. They don't need oil changes, and so they don't need as much routine maintenance as a gas car.
You're seeing a occasional article now that I get, I post to the RS stream, where, guy's driven his Tesla 250,000 miles and it's not been taken in for service once, right?
Wow.
And you see those stories, you're seeing those increasingly, where people are saying, hey, I got this, I've had this electric vehicle, I've driven it 9 years, right? And I got over 200,000 miles and I've done nothing to it. It just cost me nothing.
They probably put some tires on it.
Well, probably put some tires, but you'd do that regardless, right?
Right. Yeah, but it's not every 4,000 miles like that one start driving it,
down to the rims on the highway.
Yeah, that was so funny. I still get people occasionally reference that thing about saying all of the tire particles in the air. It's like, what are you smoking? That's not happening.
Yeah.
Or how bad EVs are for the road, because they're so heavy.
They're so heavy. Oh, poor road. Come on.
Yeah, those ones are just hilarious, and I see people posting stuff like that. But
they want to preserve what they understand, right? I mean, that's natural. If it involves change, I mean, there are things that I don't want to do, right? I'm not a fan of certain foods and things like that. And it's ingrained in you, right? You're just going to resist change. And in the case of electric cars, that's an expensive change, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know, it's unknown. You don't know what you're getting into. You don't know how it's going to affect your lifestyle. So it takes a little bit of a leap of faith here to say, all right, I'm convinced electric cars will work with my lifestyle most of the time.
Yeah, there was this electric. This is on Reddit. Somebody was talking about the hate they'd gotten for having bought an electric car, and they were discussing it. And people were, and this is a really popular thread, and it was interesting to see some people's reactions. Like, some people just say when somebody says something like that, yeah, the power in these things, it's just not everybody can handle it. But one of the more common comebacks was somebody, I bought a Tesla because it's the most American-made car, and it uses energy that's made right here in the United States. And so everything I'm doing is helping American jobs. Why are you against that? Kind of thing.
Right.
And now that's not true of all the other brands, right?
No.
But it is definitely true of Tesla, and you can say that, and then that people go on to all the different conversations. One guy was a church leader somewhere in Kentucky, and he had an F-150 Lightning, and he said, first thing I try to get them to do, it's like, here, let's come drive my truck, and he tries to do the same thing the guy did with you. He lets you, it's like, just see what it'll do. And he said people are just shocked at how, that you got basically a dragster masquerading as a pickup truck.
Right.
And when you got that 0 to 60 in like 3.5 seconds, I mean, people aren't ready for that.
How many muscle trucks are there? Right. I just curious. Funny that Dodge is releasing what they're going to release it outside the United States here. Their Dodge Charger, I think, the electric version of it. And they're going to call it the world's first electric muscle car. Well, hey guys, Ford beat you to it with an electric muscle pickup truck. It's called the F-150.
Right.
Because when you get in that thing, believe me, I've driven electric cars, right, for a long time. That sucker really impressed me, what that big thing will do. It's amazing.
Yeah. I've not driven a Performance or Plaid. Okay. But I've driven plenty of long ranges. And the acceleration on those alone is absolutely ridiculous when you start getting up to like 600 horsepower in, a a little family, and what would be considered a family car.
Yeah.
But some of the articles, somebody was saying that they went somewhere in a Model 3, and somebody said, well, how does it feel to be driving $100,000 car? It's like, I wouldn't know. I think I paid 46 for this. And the funny thing is, you look at these full-size pickup trucks, and
Yeah.
especially dualies, you're talking six figures for those things.
Oh yeah,
And we're
exactly.
not even talking the electric ones. I mean, we know that the Chevy electric trucks are like $95,000, and that Hummer is $110,000. I mean, there are some expensive EVs. There's no question.
Yeah.
Okay, but for the most part, those aren't the ones people are buying. People are buying the Model 3. Soon we're going to see that Volvo XC30. When it starts finally hitting American sales, $35,000. There's that Chevy Equinox that's in the 30,000s. I mean, there's just a lot of vehicle selection now below 40 grand.
Exactly.
And it's just hard to see this. I wanted to show this picture of the Scout interior on the model that they put out. This is impressive. Holy crap. This is really sharp looking. I mean, you look at this, it's a cool looking LED, just a nice leather, everything, very elegant vehicle, really well laid out. I just like the look of that. I still like the fact that it has some regular dash controls here versus just this. I noticed somebody I coach that's in high school. I had forgotten that she had just gotten her driver's license, and she's driving a Model Y Performance.
Oh.
And I was asking her if she's gotten to actually drive a gas car yet. But I thought, that's kind of interesting to be in a generation where you're only driving.
I remember back a decade ago telling, audience, I said, your kids are going to grow up never having driven a gasoline fossil fuel powered car. Right? We're going to get to the point. This is, of course, just I think the Leaf may have been launched, and you could buy the Tesla Roach and things like that. And I looked at these little kids, in the neighborhood that I lived, there were kids with these little toy electric cars, right? They look like Mercedes and Jeeps and things like that.
I've owned the Jeep ones.
Yeah. Right. So these kids starting off, their very first vehicle, toy, very first vehicle's electric. And now you've got this, I assume she's 16 or whatever she is.
Yeah.
Who is now her very first car that she's driven and drives regularly now is an electric, and will probably never have to get into herself personally, of course, depends on where she goes career-wise and all those things, but probably may never have to have a car that doesn't plug in and, has no tailpipe emissions and is just fun to drive. Went shopping yesterday at Trader Joe's, and there's an intersection, which you'd be familiar with, on 96th Street and Lincoln Drive down over this way.
Yeah.
And so there's, 2 lanes, or actually 3 lanes. There's a turn lane and then 2 lanes going straight up the hill towards Highway 370. And I'm in the right-hand, the right-hand lane, first car in the lane there. I'm across, the light changes, I'm across the intersection and a few hundred yards past that before all the other cars start to enter the intersection. It's just, and mine's not that fast, and I wasn't flooring it or smoking the tires or anything. I was just doing what the car does, and I was already a few hundred yards ahead of all the other cars, just because that's what the car does.
Are you saying there's a Trader Joe's at 96 and 370?
No. I said that's coming back home. There's a Walgreens.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the one over in Pacific. Okay.
Yeah. No, I was coming back from there. We had to pick up a few items.
Which one is Sarpy?
Hey, I wish there were. Come on, guys. Because that store, I went there last week, the day before Christmas Eve. The lines were back from the cash registers to the back of the store in all like 5 or 6 aisles, whatever it is. It's absolute crazy. It wasn't much different yesterday. It wasn't quite as bad, but there were still long lines of people, getting stuff obviously for tonight, New
Mhm.
Year's Eve. Um, so yeah, so they could really use a Trader Joe's in this part of town, guys.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you ever heard about this. There was this company up in like British Columbia called Pirate Joe's. And what they were doing was they were driving down into Washington State. They were buying stuff at
Trader
Trader
Joe's,
Joe's and
right,
taking it back up and just marking it up in Canada
right.
and selling it there. And I'm pretty sure they got sued in Canada by Trader Joe's, but I don't know how that ever came out. I just remember
Yeah,
it being just weird. It's like, well, how much are you going and buying? It's like, doesn't it look odd when you're leaving with like
you
15
ta-
shopping carts or
yeah,
whatever?
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really make sense. It's like you'd want the stuff in the cases, right? In the boxes, not,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Not
you
open.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, let's go to our next article. And this was a deceptive article, kind of, because I got it wrong. I had to go fix it. So,
Yeah.
aircraft manufacturer files for bankruptcy and reveals its plans. The article starts out talking about Archer Aviation, but
Right.
Archer doesn't have a problem. Okay,
No.
Archer's
No.
doing well, but I only, was skipping through it real fast. The
Yeah.
article it goes about halfway down the page before it even
Before it
actually
mentions
starts
the
about the
company.
subject. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It starts talking about Archer and Joby and Delta and Uber, different companies that are trying to
United
put money
Airlines.
into the
Yep. Yep.
eVTOL and United and all this. And it finally comes out that it's a German company
Right.
called Volocopter has been
Actually,
working on an.
the first organization, it was just a couple of guys in Germany to actually build a human capable carrying quadcopter. It's actually
Well,
not a copter, but they were the first ones to do that. And that was God, what, just after sometime mid aughts that they did that. So they're the guys that opened this whole field up for everybody.
well, the first helicopter did fly there too. So
Yeah, the German, yeah,
1944 or 45.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Germans had a helicopter. Yep, yep.
Yep. Let's see.
And a gyrocopter. Actually, they had a device that they would launch from a submarine. So a submarine would go 7-8 knots, whatever it is, through the water, and it would using that air flowing over those props would lift the single person up
Mhm.
high enough so they could get a better look around the horizon to see
Oh,
where
wow.
to
I was
see
going to
what.
say, let's not talk about the Nazi floating bell or,
No,
flying
no,
bell.
no, 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 no,
UFO
no. This was this
technology.
was this was like a small gyrocopter. It wasn't
Oh,
powered. All it did was allowed to be towed through the wall. Towed along behind a surface submarine, and they could gain I don't know 100 feet or whatever it was.
oh,
30 meters or 50 meters, whatever it was.
you could do that with like a paraglider.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like
Kind of
that.
same idea. All
Yeah.
right. Well, anyways, back to Volocopter. So they're filing for bankruptcy in German courts for financial protection to stay operational and still launch in 2025 as
Mm-hmm.
plans. One of the things we talk about this a lot. It's one thing to come up with an idea and to create a prototype. It's another thing to be able to carry it through and manufacture it and
Yeah.
actually deliver it
Yeah.
to customers. I mean,
Yep.
we know that Volkswagen is going to deliver the Scout, right? But we've seen that, there's always been fears that Rivian will never really deliver the R2 or R3. I think we're past that now.
No, I
Okay.
think so
Well,
too.
we're sure they're going to deliver that. But I'm just saying that we look at people like Aptera. Um, and we want to see that product come to market,
Yeah.
and they keep releasing prototypes, and they keep taking deposits, very small deposits, but
Yeah.
they're
Crowd
still not
crowdfunded
delivering.
deposits. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I keep having people say they don't need people's help, or they don't need somebody to step in. um, where are the Apteras?
Yeah.
We want to see it. And the same thing, Volocopter, but Now, fellow German eVTOL startup Lilium was forced to briefly shut down last week before a coalition of European and North American investors known as Mobile Uplift Corporation was able to rescue it by acquiring 2 of its subsidiaries. Lilium will be rehiring 1,000 workers the company laid off when it closed down.
Yeah.
So that's a big step.
Yeah. As I mentioned before we went live, is that of all of the eVTOL designs that are out there, I think it is the most futuristic of the bunch. It's a good looking. It's got a unique propulsion system. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. And so I'm really excited that they were able to put together some additional backing and funding and are getting back into business.
It looks like a small one because it's supposed to be a 2-person eVTOL with a range of only 22 miles.
No, the one that might be one of the early prototypes test beds.
Okay.
They have got, I think, in the works at least a 4-passenger, and I think there's a 6 or maybe even 8-passenger they're looking at. So no,
okay.
it won't. No, those are just early. I think those are
Got
early
it.
test prototypes.
Okay. Let's see. Now I want to talk about one other topic. We've been doing this now for when we started this, but we're almost at this about 1.5 years that I've been helping with this.
Yep.
And so I wanted to go
Thank you
back.
very much, by the way.
Oh, no, you're welcome. This has been really enjoyable doing these. And I just wanted to kind of review, now these are statistics. So we broadcast, some of you are watching on LinkedIn, some of you on Twitter, it could be Facebook, could be YouTube. There's a lot of places where we broadcast this, but we do our edited videos all on YouTube. Okay, so you don't see them much otherwise. But we had a really good article about how long the EV batteries last. We're almost at 19,000 views on that one.
Wow,
that's pretty good one. We
Thank
did.
you.
Here's one of the interesting ones. Our Eviation Alice video.
Right.
We're almost to 12,000 views on that video. That one's been pretty good. We did one on California hitting a record uptime where they had they operated the whole state on 100% renewable energy for like a few hours, and they did it on various days that they are being able to run all the power for the whole state. Now, we hear all this time about blackouts and stuff like that and brownouts they have in California. Yes, that still happens. Okay, the renewables aren't available. Obviously, the sun shines during the day and the wind blows when it wants to blow, but it mostly blows at night, so that they are different. And they're trying to balance it out with battery storage and other types of technology. But they've had some success. I mean, that was a really popular video. Now, we had a video from the year before we did about a Tesla that did 1.2 million miles. That one, I should go back and see how much more mileage that guy's put on the vehicle, because it's been another year. Because that guy is putting like 200,000 plus miles a year.
How much driving he's doing.
Yeah, he drives like several thousand, 2,000-3,000 miles every week. He has to have gone another 100,000 miles at least. I just can't imagine. Truckers drive about 100,000 miles a year. This guy's driving more than truckers, but he's driving all over Europe, Asia. He's been down in Africa
with them,
driving a Tesla Model S. And it seems crazy. You wouldn't think infrastructure there would be there in Africa, but apparently he's figured out how to drive it around in Africa.
I've actually interviewed a gentleman that drove from all the way through Africa.
Oh, wow!
Just using from north to south, just using local infrastructure. Now, it took him a while, obviously. That's a big continent. It's like, what, twice the size of the United States?
He was probably doing a lot of level 1 and level 2 charging.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, probably a lot of level 1 charging. Sure. Yeah. We had a really popular article about the largest renewable energy park in India. Coincidentally, that was Adani Energy or something. That guy he's being sued by the state of New York for something now.
No, yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished. You know, um, we had a really popular deal we did on Norway and what's going, how the EV transitions worked out in Norway.
Yeah.
And we did that on a lot of platforms. So I know that one had one video alone we did on it had over 5,000 views, but we had a couple of other videos we did on the live, and the other we had a couple. Each of those had 1,000 views or more, and it got thousands of views on Twitter and some other places. So I thought that was,
Cool.
it was interesting to see that. Another popular one was the Pipistrel electric airplane.
Yeah.
We talked about that, about an all electric, basically trainer type aircraft for flight
Yeah.
schools. Oddly popular was when we did a discussion about Walmart and Nikola doing hydrogen
Right.
vehicles. That was
Semi
surprised
truck.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had a number of other ones. Stuff we talked about Mexico, what upcoming EV brand. It's going to be a Mexican EV brand. The Olinia or whatever it is. That was quite
Yeah.
popular. So it was interesting to see what ended up being popular. Like we did the ones where they had the most views on the website for evworld.com. These are ones that seem to have gotten the most traction on the YouTube page.
On YouTube things, right? Yeah.
Anyways, I think we're good for today, Bill. I think this is good for our last show of the year.
Yep.
And folks, we've had lots of people watching today. Appreciate y'all tuning
Yes, we
in.
do. Yeah.
And we will be back next year. I don't know if I'm doing a show tomorrow with Mike or not. I probably ought to reach out to him.
Okay.
Anyways, folks,
How about Thursday?
Happy New Year. Yeah, we're good for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, Happy New Year, folks. And we'll be back in a day or two.